Chris Cuomo here. Welcome to NewsNation. Did you catch the skullduggery? How the White House is perpetrating a fraud, as they used to say where I grew up? Telling lawmakers, don't call it the big beautiful bill anymore. Call it the working families tax cut. Same bill, new cell. Why? Because of this. Show them the polling. The bill has a 14-point net approval rating. But for me, it's not about the numbers. It's about the truth. The tax cuts were overweighted to help the top. And the administration thinks they can change the name and change that reality. But it won't. The way they are paying for those tax cuts, which were overweighted to the top, is by cutting services like Medicaid and food programs from the people they were supposed to help and now the people they're trying to fool. Take a look. $120 billion a year in tax cuts for people making $500,000 and up. How much did they cut from health care and food assistance programs? $120 billion. Okay? Here's the deal. Did working families get tax relief? Yes, but the quality and quantity were less than what was given to the top. Don't hit me with that $3,000 number. That $3,000 a family is if you blend what the top got with everybody else. It's a skewed analysis. Look, the richest earners get 70% of the benefits, including the top 5%, which gets nearly half the benefits. The middle, look, 20, okay? 20% of earners, the working class, get 10% of the benefits. Now, not to bury you in numbers, but what is also true? You know who pays the overwhelming share of the tax burden? The top, right? Because that's how the taxes work, right? The more you make, the more you pay. They pay like 60% of the taxes, the top 5%. So give them more of a tax cut if you want. Just don't call it a working family's tax cut, because then the benefits would be skewed to the people you're naming it after, right? Now, here's the part that now nobody's really focusing on this because they're too into the blame game, right? But here's the part that really nobody is getting. I believe that what we're seeing right now is going to hurt even more than is suggested. Why? If you look at the long-term impact that this bill may have on income inequality, it's not just that you didn't get the same amount of tax relief as people who make over $500K if you do not. But when you look at the cuts to the services, okay, that the poor and working class will have to figure out how to deal with the incomes, because now they're going to have to spend more, right? Because they're not getting the same amount of benefit from the government, right? With the help on the ACA, Obamacare, with the Medicaid expansion. So now their incomes may go down even though they got the tax cuts. You see what I'm saying? It may wind up netting them to negative anyway. That's what the chart in front of you says. So that's why I say I believe Democrats are picking the right fight. But I'm telling you, I did not like this shutdown, and I think they walked into a trap. I know the polls show that there is more blame for the party in power. I get it. But Trump is using this shutdown to make moves. He learned something in his first term. He learned something about how to manipulate situations. Earlier in the week, Trump hit those two top Democrats, right? He wants to teach them a lesson. He banged New York once with state and local taxes. Now, he banged them again, withholding $18 billion in funding for subways and trains. Then last night, he terminated nearly $8 billion in grants for clean energy projects for companies in 16 Democratic-led states. But here's the irony. You know, before you're like, yeah, good, that's what they get. A lot of those cuts target projects. Yeah, the companies are in blue states, but the projects are in red states. $20 million contract for a Delaware company building a battery plant in Texas. $10 million grant for a California company, but it's helping to build a plant in Louisiana. $37 million grant for a New York company, but where is the low-carbon concrete plant they're building? Florida. So today, Trump meets with his OMB director, the Office of Management and Budget, right? This guy is famous because he's the Project 2025 guy. Why? And I was very surprised by this. They are discussing laying off federal workers because of the shutdown. The administration has been threatening to use the shutdown to cut thousands of federal jobs, and they're trying to blame the Democrats for giving them the opportunity to do it. Well, you shut down the government, we don't have the money, so I'm going to have to make cuts. It's on you. Now, that's not true. This is a choice, okay? And it, once again, is the choice to go after the people who are really part of the base. They're crossing a line by using government-funded resources. I really think this matters. I know it seems small, but I got to tell you, small things lead to big things, okay? You are not allowed to use the government agencies, government websites, government personnel to push your political agenda. I know it's gray, I know it's fuzzy, but you remember when they came after Kellyanne Conway in the last administration because she was telling people political things? That was like kind of subtle. This isn't. What that HUD site had last night, I talked to the secretary about it. He ducked the question, and I only chased him a little because he didn't make the decision to do it, okay? He's not in charge. But this is a real problem. The Hatch Act is a federal law. Federal employees can't engage in partisan activities using government resources, okay? And because people aren't stopping him, this administration, if they can get away with it, they go long and deep, okay? Check this out. Now, again, you may say you don't care, but there's a reason you've never seen anything like this before. Furloughed federal employees at the Department of Education. This is their automatic out-of-office email message, blaming Democrats for the shutdown. Look, you may say, that's not that big a deal. I'm telling you, it's erosion. It's erosion of norms and of standards and of ethics. And when certain things fall, it makes it easier for the next thing to fall. It's all ugly. Which side will decide, you know what, we're not going to be in this battle to the bottom of which is worse. We're going to be about better. Let's talk with a member from each side. Only NewsNation does this. Washington State, member of Congress, Democrat Adam Smith. Florida, member of Congress, Republican Mike Haridopolos. It's good to have you both. So first, anybody think it ends tomorrow?
No.
No? No, you either?
I hope so, but
Mike?
we'll have to see tomorrow. I'm here.
Adam, first of all, any questions with my analysis?
No,
Mike,
I think that's
anything
spot
I
on.
said piss you off?
It points up one big point, and that is how President Trump is running this government in an unprecedented partisan consolidation of power way. And that's one of the big issues for us in terms of opening up the government. So we vote to continue funding the government. Trump ignores it. I mean, he was cutting programs and firing people that had been appropriated by Congress long before this government shutdown in violation of the law. So why would we vote for another budget so he can just ignore whatever we vote for? So it's one of the big issues.
Because it's your job.
Why the shutdowns happen.
Because it's your job, Adam. Your job is to pass budgets.
No. It is not my job to vote to allow Donald Trump to continue to abuse his power in the way he runs the federal government. That is not my job. I don't have to vote yes on something. I get to choose whether a yes or a no vote is in the best interest of my constituents. That's my job.
Yes. However, are you suggesting that your job is to not act?
I am suggesting that it is my job in this instance, and there's a bunch of other issues here. But one big issue is on how President Trump has chosen to ignore the law when it comes to spending money, and specifically to punish constituents who don't support him. Forget whether or not it's a policy issue. He's making it very clear. He is going to use his power as president to leverage your vote and not pay attention to the appropriations bills that are passed. He's done it over and over and over again. So if I, as a member of Congress, then vote for those appropriations bills to simply give Trump the ability to once again ignore it without changing the law, which we can do and which is in the Democratic proposal, to change the law to restrict President Trump's ability to do that, I think that's the right vote. And I stand by
Mike,
that.
I know, Mike, a little bit of it is whataboutism, but if you change the R and the Ds and they put out on government websites and they put out as the default email signature, Republicans suck. That's why this is happening right now. You guys would have gone crazy, but not a peep about the Trump administration doing this. And I know it's not the biggest violation of the Hatch Act you've ever heard of, but you've also never seen anybody blatantly put out messaging on government websites and emails the way they're doing right now. Fair point?
Well, yeah, it's one of the things that it's a sideline issue. I think Adam and I would agree the best thing for the United States, I hope, is to keep the government open. The people who are the victims of this whole situation are not politicians. They're the people who rely on government services. They're government workers that are now furloughed. And as you know, we talked about it last week, Chris. We in the House of Representatives, we passed the budget. We sent it over to the Senate. And given the history of Chuck Schumer, who said that shutting down the government is idiocy, he's the only one at this point really shutting down the government. I think we should negotiate on a lot of things, including health care, as we move forward. But at this point, let's keep the government open. The House voted to do so. Of course, the Democrats, with the exception of one, voted to close down the government. I don't think that's a good idea. As you and I talked about before again, Chris, the idea is, how do we keep some economic momentum going? By shutting down the government, it costs a lot of money to close. It costs a lot of money to open back up. It's just politics.
Same way when you guys,
I got back in
same way,
politics.
Mike, when you guys did it. Same, but Republicans have done the same thing. So the
Chris,
idea,
I can't speak what happened. I can't speak what happened.
No,
in the
I know,
past.
Mike.
I'm a new
not
member,
asking you to own it. I'm just saying
we're looking forward on this. Yeah.
I get it. I get it. But as a new member, this is my question to you, okay? I understand why you don't want to answer the first question that I asked you. I get it. I understand the dynamic. However, this show is a little different. These are violations of the Hatch Act, okay? It is a bad look to use government resources to push political propaganda. Do you not agree with that statement?
Well, I think without doubt that we've seen this weaponization happen before. I'm sure if I did a little bit of homework tonight, I can find some examples.
Mike,
but
never,
to your point tonight,
never an automated message on emails, never saying the radical right on a government website. I'm telling you, we did the homework. And I get why you don't want to say anything, Mike, but don't you think that's part of the problem, that you're afraid to say what you would absolutely say if you switch the R and the D?
Well, I think Adam's done enough talking on that one. But and my sense is let's open the government back up. It's that easy. It's that easy.
I get it.
Well,
Adam,
Chris,
let me ask you something.
Sure.
You can respond to that, but I also want to, you heard me off the top. I think you guys are right in fighting the right fight. I don't think switching the name of the bill makes the reality of the bill any different. I'm okay with people getting tax cuts. That's fine. That's your guys' choices. It's the president's choice. But don't call it a middle-class tax cut if they're not who benefits most from the bill and you're paying for it off their backs. I think that's the right fight for you guys to have. But I think this shutdown suckered you guys in, and that's why he's now able to do all of these sneaky things that he's doing.
No, first of all, Chris, two big points. One, he's been doing these sneaky things ever since he got sworn in. I mean, how many executive orders did he sign on the very first day? The notion that somehow the shutdown has unleashed all these bad things that President Trump is doing. How many hundreds of thousands of federal employees has he fired? How many hundreds of billions of dollars in appropriated programs has he frozen or shut down? Shut down the Department of Education, shut down USAID, fired countless people at the Department of Defense because they weren't personally loyal enough to him, used the Justice Department to pursue his political enemies while pardoning all of his political friends. I mean, come on. He's been doing this for 9 months, all right? We weren't suckered into anything. He started it from the moment that he got elected and moved it in that direction. So that's number one. Number two, here's the reality of the situation. Because of the Senate rules, the Republicans, for the first time this whole year, need Democratic votes to move forward with their agenda.
To get it done.
We're supposed to just say, oh, gosh, if you need our votes, even though you're not going to negotiate with us, you're not going to give us anything, Trump is going to continue to run the government, as you just showed, in the most partisan, political, personal power grab way in the history of this country. Yeah, okay, we'll vote for that because it's inconvenient not to.
No, listen, I get it. No, I'm not asking you to do that. I am asking this, though, Adam.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what is reasonable. Yes, they're playing games with illegal versus lawful and who gets what services. And even Republicans, Mike, you know this, even though you weren't here for it. Republicans were in favor of the reimbursements to states. It was about upping it to 90%. Everybody knows you've got a moral and legal imperative to give emergency services to people, whether they're here legally or not. Republicans have warm blood in their veins as well. What I'm saying, Adam, is you guys can give on that. the reimbursement rate could come back down to what it used to be. Asylees may be here lawfully, but it's kind of fugazi because 90% of them don't get asylum. So it's a runaround that allows them to get treated like they're lawful when they're not. Why don't you give on that?
True. And that's fine. I give on that. But you're missing the bigger point here. Okay.
Hakeem won't.
Whatever tiny little percentage of the people who benefit from the Affordable Care Act might be here because of the asylum process that I've said many times I didn't agree with, that Joe Biden did. It was way too wide and way too broad. Whatever tiny little percentage of that, you've got millions of other Americans who are going to lose health care as a result of that, number one. And number two, I got to keep coming back to, if we vote in favor of the Republican budget, to continue the Republican budget, we are voting in favor of an unprecedented abuse of power that we believe passionately has been damaging to the country. Now, if Republicans disagree, fine. Then you vote the way you want to vote. We'll vote the way we want to vote. And also, the Senate has a Democratic plan to keep the government open. Okay, why don't Republicans vote for that if they're so hell-bent to keep the government open? We put a plan on the table. They don't like it, and they're voting no on that.
What do you hear, Mike, about what's happening in the Senate? I know you guys are both in the House, and I respect that. But, Mike, you can respond to it. But do you think that there's any room for movement anytime soon from what you hear about your colleagues on the Senate side?
Well, let's just be clear. Adam's, I think, mixing a couple things up here. One is that we're talking about a 7-week stopgap measure. During the Biden administration, you know this, Chris, we talked about it last week, 13 times the Democrats used this as a stopgap to get to the real negotiations that are going to take place at the end of November. That's part one. Part two is the ransom for us to open the government up is $1.5 trillion. That's the amount of money that they want to put in spending for us to open up the government.
Actually
so
not accurate.
Don't act like it's some
$300 billion, but yes.
Adam, I let you talk. You need to let me talk.
I'll let him correct it. Go ahead, Mike.
So with that in mind, you're talking about going back and spending money on USAID, and we all heard about that stuff. We talked about NPR and those PBS programs. We decided to cut those. And the other programs were just the idea where we voted on them. That wasn't Trump acting unilaterally. We rescinded $9 billion. And all we're asking them to do is to go back to the March agreement that we made with Chuck Schumer. And for the next 7 weeks, we'll have the government open. And then the debate that Adam and I are going to have long term is, what about those health care programs? That's the debate that really matters. And that's what we should have in November instead of penalizing federal workers and shutting down the government as we are right now.
I got to tell you something, Adam. I want you to respond to that, and this isn't relevant to you guys. I'm going to give you the last word, Adam, and I appreciate you both. I hope Chuck knows what he's doing, Schumer. You know, I grew up with him, you know, as a member of the House and the Senate. You know, he's New York. But this, I believe, is the open door for AOC to run for his seat, because he owns this in a bad way right now. I know that's not about you guys, but I know. What is your real dollar amount if it's not $1.7 trillion?
Fair enough. The point that made me crazy was the notion that, Congress approved what Trump is doing. He hasn't done anything unusual. Well, first of all, even the $9 billion you're talking about he cut it long before we voted on it one way or the other, which is illegal.
Right.
But second of all, he cut all manner of other programs that we've never voted on. He cut transportation programs. He cut energy programs. He cut hundreds of thousands of jobs. He got rid of the Department of Education. He has violated what we used to think of as the law constantly. And that's the opportunity we have in front of us. Okay, we can keep it going for 7 weeks. And then what? All right? If we don't fundamentally change Trump's abuse of power, then why are we voting for a budget that is going to be completely under his control and outside the rule of law and the Constitution? I mean, it's fair for Republicans to say they're fine with all of that and they want to vote for it. I don't think it's fair for them to say somehow we have to vote for that.
Yeah, I get it. I'm just saying I think the middle ground is you figure out what you can live with to keep it open so people don't pay the price, and then you sue.
Well, let's talk
on the other stuff. If it's illegal,
Mike
what he's
Johnson's
doing.
Position right now is we're not going to negotiate. You know, you vote for this, or we're just going to.
It's going to happen. It's going to start on the Senate side, and then it's going to go to reconciliation again for you guys. But look, this has been very helpful to my audience. There's a lot of critical thinkers, and I appreciate it. Adam Smith, I appreciate you. I thought you were having a seizure there for a second with the hands. I was ready. I'm training as a first responder.
I'm an emotive
help you out.
person. I respond.
I
don't
like it. I like it. You must have some Italian blood in there somewhere. Somewhere there's an Italian in you somewhere, Adam Smith.
Yes.
And Mr. Haridopolos, you're always welcome here. Thank you for making the case. We don't have to agree to treat each other with respect, and I respect you both for that. All right, we'll meet again because it ain't going to end anytime soon. 4 minutes and 35 seconds. I hope that gave you some shape on what this is about for each side, because there's so much noise. You got to get some more signal. All right. Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement, very holy day for the Jewish people. Day of reflection. Why so quiet about congregants in England getting attacked coming out of the synagogue? Did you hear about this? Guy drives into them, stabs people, 2 people die. Imagine if he had the access to the weapons that you do have here, how many he would have killed, this guy. Reportedly, this Syrian refugee. We have to look at it from what this says about what is happening, and it's going to happen here more. Next. Killing Jews, political violence, didn't get a lot of mention today. I get it. It's in London, it's in England. You know, it's different than here. But is it really? On Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement, high holy day for the Jews. Guy, a Syrian immigrant, rams his car into a synagogue, smashes through the gates, gets out, stabs people. Imagine if he had a real weapon. He killed 2 people, injured 4 more. Police did have a weapon, shot him, killed him. Authorities say he was wearing what appeared to be a suicide vest. But later that was said to not really be real. Maybe he was deranged. You know, maybe it isn't terrorism the way we think it because this guy was crazy more than he was just evil. But a bunch of other people, 2 men and a woman, were also arrested on suspicion of helping plan an attack in connection with the killings. So what does this suggest as a dynamic there, and what does it mean here? I want to bring in retired FBI Supervisory Special Agent James Gagliano and Douglas Murray. Now, Douglas's latest book is called On Democracies and Death Cults, Israel and Future of Civilization. Thank you both, gentlemen. Appreciate you. Douglas, to the American audience who says, it's not here, it doesn't really matter, it's different here. What do you say?
Well, first of all, it is here. It is here in America. And what we saw today on the Festival of Yom Kippur in Manchester, which is probably about the 2nd largest Jewish community in the UK, was in real time what it means to globalize the Intifada. It is what those protesters on Ivy League campuses in America have been calling for. It is what groups in New York and many other American cities on the streets have been calling for. This is what Intifada means. This is what we saw in the Second Intifada and the First Intifada in Israel. It's the use of whatever weapons you have to hand to kill. And that is what happened. You mentioned, Chris, that this man today, he's been named as Jihad al-Shami, which means the jihad from Syria. He was a Syrian migrant himself to the UK, 35 years old. You mentioned that if he'd have had access to even worse, more dangerous lethal weapons than he had, the attack could have been even more deadly. And you also mentioned just one particularly important detail there that's worth picking up. We don't know yet about the device that he was wearing, but there has been a precedent in previous jihadist attacks in the UK of the attackers wearing fake suicide vests. That happened in the 2017 London Bridge attack when 3 jihadists went across London Bridge slashing at people's throats, including a pregnant woman, and shouting Allahu Akbar. Those men were also wearing vests that looked like they were suicide vests and turned out not to be viable explosive vests. And so there is a pattern of that in this. You might ask, why would somebody wear a suicide vest like thing that wasn't a suicide vest. And one answer is that that's also something that some jihadists have done in Britain and elsewhere, because among other things, they know that it leads to maximal terror, and it also is likely to lead to the police shooting them dead, doing a shoot to kill on them, because of the threat of a detonation. So there's a pattern here. But obviously, Britain is reeling from this. Jewish communities around the world, including in American cities, are reeling from this.
Yeah.
I hope that people really understand now, if they didn't before, what these calls to globalize the Intifada mean in reality.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we're dealing with it in our politics. Here, Douglas, I'll let you into a little the inner world for me and Jimmy. Jimmy and I had taken a break from Islamists because it hasn't really been happening here. And we've often talked about how, boy, what we see in Europe, what we see in the UK with not Muslims, with extreme Islamists is something we've been spared recently for whatever reason. But Jimmy, when you look at this, we do have it going on here. It's just not always jihadis. It's these new proxies they have who are American citizens. You wouldn't be shocked if this happened here, but the guy's name was Charles Smith, and he was just a pissed off guy who dropped out of college.
Extremism is extremism, Chris, and Douglas is right on point when you ask him the question about, how does this impact us here? We know it's already here, Chris. 8 years ago, you and I were in Las Vegas trying to make sense of 50 people being murdered at a country concert. Look, this all goes back to the grievance collectors. And in this instance, you've got a guy who moved there at 6 years old. He's 35 years old, been there for 29 years. Was there a struggle to assimilate? And look, from the FBI's perspective, why are we interested in this? Well, Chris, there's a thing called the Five Eyes, right? So it's Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the United States, and the United Kingdom. We talk. It's an intelligence alliance. And techniques, tendencies, trend lines. Obviously in Europe, and especially in the UK, it's more difficult to get a gun. So what do they use? They used edge weapons, or in Nice, France, they used big vehicles and they killed 80 people or 90 people there. So yes, this is very serious, Chris. Could this have been a lone wolf? Certainly. But the fact that 3 people are in custody, 2 young men in their mid-30s, 1 woman in her 60s, tells me there might be more to this as we start peeling the layers away.
Like what?
Well, like, could this be a conspiracy? And again, for it to be a conspiracy, was this young man directed to do this, or was he inspired to do it? Now, inspiration is more nebulous because people get radicalized online all the time. But was he directed? And then if these 3 people in custody, and potentially more, if that's what the investigation finds, did anyone provide material support to him? Is there a bigger cell there? Are there other planned attacks? That's the most important thing right now for law enforcement.
Even though we're on Yom Kippur, Douglas, I'll give you the last word here. I was shocked at how little coverage this got. Yes, it's another country, but I don't think that's the only reason it's kind of muted in its coverage here in America. What's your take?
Several things just very quickly. Of course, it has also come to America. Let's not forget the shootings of 2 young people in Washington, D.C. just a few months ago. They happened to be Israeli embassy staffers, but they were coming out of an event at a Jewish museum in Washington, D.C., when they were gunned down in cold blood by somebody screaming "Free Palestine." So yes, it is here. If you just walk to any synagogue in the US, walk to the synagogues in New York, every single one of them on a high holiday like this has massive police and other protection. Why is that? Because we've allowed this to ferment and grow inside all of our societies. I've just got to push back on one thing we just heard there about the assimilation thing. It seems to me that if somebody comes to a country like Great Britain and their parents have called them jihad, and they have lived their life in the UK. It's quite hard for a country, even that had the best assimilating policies in the world, to assimilate people named jihad in a community which, to quote somebody I don't like quoting, but the one true thing he's ever said, Mehdi Hassan, the journalist, said 12 years ago in a truthful piece, he said, anti-Semitism among British Muslims is, quote, rife and commonplace. He said, every Muslim reading this will know that what I'm saying is true. He said, quote, it is our dirty little secret. When you see Muslims going through the streets of London for the last 2 years from the day of October the 7th, 2023, celebrating the massacre of Jews in Israel, calling for jihad on the streets of Britain, when the British police say in response to that, the word jihad can mean lots of things. That's what the Metropolitan Police tweeted out. They said, jihad can mean lots of things. It can mean internal spiritual struggle, as if the bearded men on the streets of London calling for jihad were calling for an interpersonal spiritual struggle. We have been insane in countries like Britain in our immigration policies, in our lax vetting policies, in failing to deport people who should never have been in the UK, and much, much more. And the result is you make sure that if you bring in the world's people, you also bring in the world's problems. And that includes there's anti-Semitism in all communities, as there is bigotry from all communities. But the Muslim communities have a particular problem with Jews. And until that is dealt with head on, you will see things like this that happened today happen more and more, and not just in Britain, but in America and elsewhere. We would deal with this if this was right-wing anti-Semitism or neo-Nazi anti-Semitism. Why don't we have the guts to deal with it when it comes from a minority community?
Because they're growing in number and power. Douglas Murray, thank you very much. I appreciate your perspective as always. Jimmy Gagliano, thank you very much. Thank you both.
Thank you.
4 minutes and 30 seconds. I remember what Douglas was talking about with Mehdi. In context, though, he said it pained him to admit that. I don't believe Mehdi is a hater. He can be very forceful, and he obviously has his positions, but I don't want to paint him too darkly. Second thing is, we don't have the population of Islamists here, not just Muslims. Don't lump everybody together. Don't do that. But we have replaced the threat that is being seen in other places with extreme Islamists with our own people who are saying globalize the Intifada. And they're like a white kid from Connecticut. Diddy Combs, is he going to get it thrown at him or is he going to get out? Sentencing is tomorrow. Could get 20 years, could go home. What is likely? Two different points of view. And we're going to look into a little bit of who else the judge has asked, who's been asking to help Diddy. That may be part of the analysis. Next. My Jewish brothers and sisters, I'm sorry you have to live in the fear that you do on your high holy day, but I hope you had an easy fast. Thank you for the messages. It's good to have you back with us tonight. Here's good news. I have no idea what's going to happen with Diddy tomorrow. I am listening to these two guests as closely as any of you. I don't know if he's going to get a bunch of years. His judge doesn't seem to love him. Okay. Now, he's going to be sentenced tomorrow for the 2 counts, right? What were they again? Roll up so I can see. Transporting women across state lines, Mann Act, for the purpose of prostitution. Combs was acquitted of the 3 more serious charges. Remember the racketeering, the RICO? Remember how we were here saying, I'd never seen any RICO where it's just one guy like this. Prosecutors want him locked up for more than a decade. Diddy's defense has asked for a little bit over a year, including the time served already, which would mean he would be just about ready to get out. So the strategy has been remind who Diddy is on the positive side. Dozens of letters, including from his family, former girlfriends, employees, even fellow inmates, to whom he's teaching a business class. Quotes are common, such as, Mr. Combs teaches us about how chasing easy money is the wrong way to achieve greatness. Mr. Combs has affected me in a good way and has impacted me because I've learned many things like how to create a successful plan. He's given me something to look forward to, and I'm currently studying a new business venture, so when I'm released, I can move forward. Now, of course, the judge could say, great, you'll do a lot of good while you're on the inside for the next 5 years. There are also letters asking the judge to throw the book at Combs. His ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, wrote, his first actions will be swift retribution towards me and others who spoke up. I remain very much afraid of what he's capable of and the malice he undoubtedly harbors toward me for having the bravery to tell the truth. Combs himself wrote his own plea. I take full responsibility and accountability, he wrote, for my past wrongs. The old me died in jail and a new version of me was reborn. Prison will change you or kill you. I choose to live. So, What do we think is going to happen? Two much better minds. Criminal trial attorney Sara Azari, civil rights attorney Areva Martin. All right, Sara, I start with you. Areva, great to have you as well. I don't have a clue. What do you think and why, Sara?
What do I think is that the prosecution couldn't get him with the serious charges at trial, so they're making up for it here. And I think, to me, it's very obvious, Chris, they are victimizing people who are not victims. They, much like initially thought that his ex-girlfriend Gina should be a victim, and she didn't show up to testify, and she apparently now in a letter is saying, I was never a victim. I didn't consider myself a victim. I was in a consensual relationship, and this was our intimacy. They are also, Chris, turning those male escorts into victims. All along, we've had Cassie and Jane. Now suddenly they're adding 8 more victims of the male escorts. Why? Because when you have 10 or more victims to a crime, you now get grouping, and that's a way to enhance the sentence. It is dirty, it is gamesmanship, and I don't think he should do a day more than what he's done. But I think if he gets 4 or 5 years, that's probably supported and fair.
Wow. Areva, I keep hearing in people's comments about this, but the tape, but the tape, but the tape. You know, what people saw him do to Cassie seems to be the end of the analysis. Now, a judge is a lot more sophisticated, though, right? So how do you think it breaks and why?
Well, I think, Chris, you don't have to be a lawyer to determine what this judge is going to do. You just have to be an observer of people and an observer of the facts in this case. The judge has pretty much signaled what he's going to do. Diddy was in court recently asking for an acquittal, asking for a new trial, asking to be released on bail, which he's been asking since the conviction. And the answer coming back from this judge over and over again is no, no, and still no. The judge continues to make reference to the violence that he heard, the evidence that was presented during this trial, and the judge has made it clear that he's going to pay a price for the violence that he perpetrated against the victims in this case. I don't know what trial Sara was watching when she said there are no victims. There are plenty of victims. And I think we should expect this judge to...
She said they added to the victims. She didn't say there are no victims. She said they added to the victims to enhance.
Victims. There are plenty. Thank you for that correction. Let me be clear. There are plenty of victims in this case, and we heard from those victims. And I think the judge is going to do what he's continued to do in this case, which is hold him accountable for his acts.
So here's the thing. They are scouting for victims. There were 2 victims. There was Jane and there was Cassie, not anybody else. And at this, to Areva's point, this brings me to the very important point, which is the most contested thing in this sentencing hearing, is the idea of whether relevant conduct includes the acquitted conduct. So relevant conduct has to be considered by a judge in arriving at a fair sentence. But there was a recent change in the law, Chris, where they said that under the sentencing guidelines, if you're acquitted of an offense, then perhaps that conduct is not relevant. And that's exactly what the defense is saying. They're saying he was acquitted of sex trafficking. Therefore, force, fraud, or coercion are not things that should be considered in sentencing him on prostitution. That is the key fight tomorrow, is whether acquitted conduct is relevant conduct. If it is, he's screwed. I mean,
Well,
Areva's
you're
gonna,
right, and I agree with you.
yeah,
I'm
but
sorry.
Areva's going to say it's not enough time. Areva's going to say that's not even enough time.
Well, let's see. Let us say it. Areva, you get the last word.
I'm going to agree with you that the acquitted conduct, according to the change in the law, according to a Supreme Court case, shouldn't be considered by the judge. But when that conduct overlaps, it is absolutely appropriate for the judge to consider overlapping conduct. And I think there's enough overlapping conduct to give this judge an opportunity to go to the higher end of the sentencing guidelines. In this case, we already know federal probation has come in with a 5 to 7 year recommendation. My guess, Chris, is that the judge is going to either follow those recommendations by federal probation or even go above that 7 years. And we could see 11 years. Look, Cassie said he tortured her for 11 years. We know the prosecution has asked for 11 years. So that might be the magical number tomorrow.
Well, you have relevant conduct,
guys,
and you also have aggravating factors. That video and the violence is all aggravating factors as well. So I think if he gets anything less than 4, it's an absolute gift. But I'm guessing 4 to 5.
I appreciate it. It's nice to have actual practitioners to take us inside the game. Areva Martin, thank you very much. Sara Azari, as always. I appreciate you both. Now, we're going to take a break. When we come back, I wanted to talk about something tonight, and I got caught up because the lawmakers were so compelling on that one point that I didn't add a second. I will tell you you guys ask me very often, what do I think the biggest problem is? If I could change one thing, what would it be? I know what it is now. When it comes to politics, you want to know? Come back after the break. Get rid of Citizens United. I don't know how to do it. You'd have to have another case. But when I see that the Trump administration wants to now push the FEC to have even less rules in terms of coordinating for a political party, coordinating directly with candidates, that there should be able to get more money in, make it easier to flow money. The money is killing us. If you want to know why social media is the Wild West, look at the money. The tech bros have the most money, and they're putting the most money to work. If you have a beef about, our alliances abroad, our politicians are for sale. And it's not illegal money, it's legal money in these PACs, and you don't know where it's coming from or who it is, but they don't coordinate with campaigns. It is killing us. And that could be a big, big change, because it would change the grip that the parties have over the process. We'll be right back. Just got an interesting quote from somebody. Why would either side end the shutdown if they're not worried about pissing people off? Good question. Good question. Leland Vittert, right now.
Well, I have an answer of why they're going to continue the shutdown. Another reason, which is they're not worried about pissing people off. But number two, both sides are raising an awful lot of money doing it.
I mean, look, grievance, outrage, opposition, this is what works, and it is also amplified by the social media platforms. So this is working just fine for a horrible game.
And you, my friend, like a true television professional, has perfectly set up the top of the 9 p.m. hour. Chris, great show.